All right, and we are live. So welcome everybody. It's been a long time since we did an online town hall meeting here with NFOA. So welcome back for those of you that have caught one of these before. And if this is your first live online town hall meeting, well, guess what? It's mine too, since I've been on the board of directors. So welcome for the first time, all of you. My name is John Anderson. I am the director of media for Nebraska Firearms Owners Association. And on screen, we have two of our other board members as well. They're going to take us through some of these bills tonight. So real quick, let's just say hello. We'll let the lady go first. We have our president, Patricia Harold. How are you doing tonight?
Well, I'm warm. That's the most important thing. And luckily, there hasn't been a blackout that's hit my neighborhood yet.
Yes.
So I'm fully charged, and I have an alternate means of connecting to the internet.
You know, it's funny. We were thinking about doing this on what ended up being Super Bowl Sunday, so we decided to not have it that night. And then we pushed it back a week, and lo and behold, hey, it's Valentine's weekend. People probably have plans both Saturday and Sunday. So we decided to push it till tonight. And of course, we've got the rolling blackouts rolling through the state here. So we just can't win for losing. So hopefully everybody's power stays on. And as you're watching this, hopefully either your power stays on or you're on a mobile device, and that's not such an issue. Also with us tonight, we have our Director of Legislative Affairs, Keith Kollasch, is here. How are you doing, Keith?
Not too bad.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Yes. All right. So real quick, just so that everybody gets a chance to know a few of the board members, I am coming live from Norfolk tonight, Northeast Nebraska. Trish, where are you located?
I'm in the Papillion area.
Okay. And then Keith, where do you hail from?
I'm in Auburn.
In Auburn. Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
All right. So now everybody kind of has an idea. The board's kind of spread a little bit across the state. We don't have anybody way out in the Panhandle. We do have someone up in the Spencer area on the board as well. So this isn't just something that folks from Omaha or Lincoln are part of. And we really want to not only get you the information, but we want you to help us grow and help get some people involved with NFOA that are going to be, active and help us to accomplish the mission, because the NFOA isn't the 7 people on the board. It's not just the people that are on committees. It's not just the people that volunteer. It's all of us. Every Nebraska firearm owner should be a member of the NFOA, and it's free to join. So I don't know why you wouldn't, but this isn't a big organization where we have tons of money coming in from private sources. This is a boots on the ground type of organization where it's all volunteer run, it's all volunteer driven, and really without the volunteers and without Nebraskans just like you and me, nothing would get accomplished. And that's the whole purpose of this. Is we're not like some of those other groups that you might hear about doing national stuff. We're actually just a whole bunch of Nebraskans that really want to see our rights preserved, and that's really what it comes down to. So let me just kind of go over. I've got some notes here that I kind of want to follow. As Nebraska's primary Second Amendment organization, our hardworking volunteers have been spending time reading and becoming experts in the current set of bills proposed by our senators in the unicameral. The first step required to preserve your rights is to be informed, and that's why you're here tonight. So real quick, before I go on, I just want to mention, if you're catching us live, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube, there's a live chat section. There's a comment section if you're on Facebook. The live chat, if it didn't already pop up on your screen on the YouTube side, then there's a button on your phone. If you're watching it in the up and down the portrait view, then it's right below the picture, and you can hit live chat. And we want you to interact. That's why we're doing this live. If you have questions as we go along or comments as we go along, then now is your time to get them asked. You don't have to wait to find out answers. That's why we're doing this, and we wanted to be accessible. And that's why it's on Facebook and YouTube both. So the first step is to be informed, and that's why we're all here. The second step is taking action when these bills are scheduled for their committee hearings. And then if they're voted out of the committee, connecting with Nebraska senators during the debates and voting period on the floor, and making sure that they vote the way that you want them to, or the way that we all want them to. So, all right, we've got a lot of stuff that we want to cover. If you're out there and you're making those comments and leaving those questions, I will try as I go along here and keep tabs on these. And if I have to cut people off. I'll try not to cut anybody off when they're talking, but if we've got some questions, we will do our best to get through them all. Okay. So just bear with me here. If you don't see your question right away, looks like a lot of people are just kind of letting us know where they're going to, where they're coming from here. So that's awesome. We've got some folks from all across the state looking good out there on both sides, Facebook and YouTube. All right. So let's just get into the bills here. The first one that we're going to talk about, I think we're going to spend quite a bit of time on this one. This is LB 300, and this changes the provisions related to the justification for the use of force, or as we like to call it at the NFOA, the most common sense piece of common sense gun legislation we've seen in a long time. So Keith, would you do us the honors of just kind of summarizing what this bill is, what it does, and why this is important to us?
Well, it's got a couple different things that it really kind of clarifies and strengthens for Nebraska law. First of all, it actually expands what the protections of the statutes are. Generally, right now, the self-defense statutes are for in your home, your place of business, and that kind of thing. But this does extend it to your vehicle as well. So, a carjacking situation or something like that, you wouldn't have the duty to retreat and jump out of your car or try and drive away if somebody is trying to carjack you. So that's one of the things that it does. Also, and probably the biggest thing, especially for the work that I do as a criminal defense attorney, it changes the burden on from you to the state. Because currently, right now, the way the statute is, the burden is on you to prove that you had a reason to defend yourself in your own home. What this bill does is it reverses that, and the presumption is that the person coming into your home is coming into your home with ill intent, that they're there to do you some sort of harm. And then it's up to the state to prove that, rather than having it reversed the way it currently is, where it's on you. Basically, you can get in a situation where someone comes into your home and there's no other witnesses, no other evidence, and it's basically your word against some person that's breaking into your home, and whether or not that person had ill intent or wanted to cause you any kind of bodily harm or anything like that. So this changes the burden of proof on that. And that's a big change from where we're at right now. Again, it's probably the biggest part of that, at least for what I do, having that switched around. So it's no longer you trying to defend yourself, not only against an intruder, but also in the court of law. So I think that's probably the biggest change on it. And it does line up with a lot of the other states that have already implemented the Castle Doctrine. So it's not that Nebraska is at some leading edge of some crazy self-defense law or anything like that. We're catching up to where a lot of other states already are.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an attorney, but I kind of remember this from just basic government class back in school, which was way more years ago than I'm willing to admit right here. But typically in a court of law, especially in a criminal hearing, the burden of proof should rest on the prosecution, right? You should never have to prove that you couldn't flee or that you couldn't retreat, because how do you prove a negative? I remember that from math class. So this puts the burden of proof back where it belongs, if this was to put passed into law, so that if you were ever tried in a criminal court, then the prosecution would have to prove that you could have gotten away in some sort of fashion. Is that correct? In part, that's what this does?
It does. It changes the burden of proof. Everybody's always heard, you're innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
The way this statute is set up, and there are other statutes like this as well, but you have an affirmative defense where you have to prove that this person had some sort of ill intent and that they intended to do you harm. It switches that burden back onto the state rather than for you having to defend yourself in that matter.
Okay, perfect. All right. So a couple of questions that I have real quick on this. First off, how will this change to make Nebraska law match what is commonly understood in other states that have a quote unquote castle doctrine?
Well, it's pretty much the language that I've seen on here compared to what other states have. It pretty much puts us in line with what other castle doctrine states are currently have for their statutes. Again, like I said, this is nothing groundbreaking. It's nothing new that Nebraska is trying to do. We're basically catching up to what a lot of other states have done. The language is pretty much standard that you would find in any other state that has the castle doctrine.
Very cool. Okay. And then also, how would the change of extending this doctrine to the vehicle have in regards to how citizens can respond to violent attacks by either mobs or attempted carjackers, things like that?
Well, again, it basically lines it up with your vehicle is an extension of your home. So the way it's set up right now, you have no extra protections in your vehicle. Basically, you have a duty to retreat in your vehicle. And as we all know, especially the videos that you've seen where you're surrounded by a mob, you really don't have any place to retreat to. So that gives you that some extra protection there, where again, the burden is not going to be on you to prove that you didn't have any other choice. It's going to be on the state to prove that, that you maybe had some other options. But again, the burden goes back to the state. So it's just extending the protections that you have in your home to your vehicle. And again, like we've seen over the last year, there are definitely situations out there where when you're in a vehicle, you are not going to have many choices of what you can do.
Very cool. Now, one thing that I'd like to point out, a lot of opponents of a bill such as this, when it comes to castle doctrine, and when you start having conversations about such a thing out in the real world, not in legal terms necessarily, but just as ordinary folks are talking about such a thing, another term that gets thrown out is stand your ground. And this is not stand your ground. This is castle doctrine. But there are a lot of people who are in opposition to such a thing. And sometimes their stance is claims that, this is going to make people think that they are, they're able to maybe fight some crime, or maybe not fight some crime, but, that you can turn into Batman or the Punisher, some sort of vigilante that, you're all of a sudden above the law, and somehow people will think that they have a license to kill. And that's clearly not the case. But would you address that real quick on this too?
Well, it's right there in the statute. This only applies to certain places. Mm-hmm. It would apply to your vehicle, your home, your place of work, and that's pretty much it. So it's those three areas, and there are exceptions to those as well. So if you go into the statute, if it doesn't apply if another person living in the home attacks you. It doesn't work in that situation. If you're at work and a coworker attacks you, it doesn't necessarily apply in that situation either. But those are the only places that the statute will actually apply. So if you're at, you see a lot of the videos where in the states where they do have stand your ground, and you're out in a parking lot at a Casey's or something like that, it doesn't apply in that situation. That's still going to be handled by the same self-defense laws that are currently on the books. Probably the best example, but yeah, it only applies in those three particular places.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, and the reason that I brought that up and asked about that is because I'm just trying to think of ways that maybe this could be misconstrued or misrepresented by people who would oppose such a thing. Really, this more applies to it, from what I can tell, a couple of basic scenarios that maybe don't happen to every person, but they happen far too often at all in our state, where maybe somebody is dealing with a stalker, or they have a restraining order against someone or something like that. And they would get, forbid it should happen, but a disgruntled ex, whether it's spouse or whatever is the case, where we know that we're already protected legally in the use of force in our home or in our place of work, but you step out that door and you get into the car, and the way that the law stands right now in Nebraska, you still have to try to get away. And if somebody would try and come up and start something when you're in the car, whether it's, they catch you at a red light or you're in your yard or whatever's the case, I mean, you have no legal justification to defend yourself in a case like that. Whereas this bill would make it to where you'd still be covered in your mode of transportation as well. Is that correct?
That's true. I mean, right now you can defend yourself, but again, the burden is on you to prove that you are in some sort of danger of serious bodily injury, or there's several statutory provisions where they specifically apply the self-defense statutes. But currently, the way it is right now, in your vehicle, you're pretty much wide open. Again, if you are attacked, you can use the self-defense statutes, but the burden again falls back on you to prove that you are in that danger, instead of having the assumption that, okay, somebody opens my door to my car at an intersection. Pretty much the assumption right now, or the assumption would be, well, that person is going to do some sort of harm because somebody doesn't normally do that. The way it is right now, you would have to prove that that person meant to do you some harm. So this just reverses it. So now it's on the state to try and prove that that person did not intend to do you any harm. And it just gives you a lot more leeway. It's much, much easier to defend yourself when you're not having that additional burden to try and get into somebody else's head to see what they're thinking and try and prove that. But again, this will just clarify it, extends it to your vehicle. And I think it catches Nebraska up with what a lot of other states have already done.
Sure. And then you might have mentioned this before. I was trying to read some of the comments here, but I just want to go back to the part where, whether it's in a vehicle, your workplace, or in your home, especially in your home, part of the bill also includes language for if somebody forces entry into your house, into your vehicle, whatever it is. This would also help me out with the right wording here, but this would make it to where it's already assumed that they intended to harm you, correct?
Right. The assumption currently is that, currently you have to show what their intent was, which is difficult to do. Mm-hmm. This switches it. So if somebody comes into your home, the assumption is that they're there to do some harm. Now, it's a rebuttable presumption. So if the state can put on some sort of evidence that shows that, it was the meter man and he wanted to come and check your meter inside your home, they could put on that evidence to show, well, no, there wasn't any intent of doing any harm. But again, the burden's on the state to show that rather than you.
Sure. And of course, in an instance like that, they would gain access to the home in a legal fashion. They wouldn't kick in a door as well. So but the fact is, I didn't realize until I started reading this bill that we didn't have that assumption already in place, that if somebody kicked in my door, that I cannot legally assume at this point that they intend to hurt me. And if somebody kicked in a door, I don't see what other reason there would be, unless they have they have a warrant to go into that place. So I just like the clarification, the fact that this makes things, again, it brings common sense wording into some situations that could otherwise be muddled up, and it keeps our citizens better protected in the event that they would have to defend themselves. So I think it's a great thing. Real quick here, we've got a couple questions. The first one actually did get answered over there on the Facebook side, but Sheila wanted to know, is this bill scheduled for hearing? And we didn't, and this is my fault, I didn't say this before we started in on these. All of the bills that we are going to discuss, except for a couple at the end, and I'll let you know which ones, but for now, all of these bills are scheduled at some point to go before the Judiciary Committee. And so March 3rd is when most of these are going to be heard. This one for sure on March 3rd. I have requested that day off my job. Again, I said we're volunteers, guys. We all have day jobs. So we have to take time off work in order to go and testify. We understand that it's not always convenient for you to go do so because we're in the same boat as you, okay? But everybody that we can If we can get people, actually bodies to show up at the Capitol, March 3rd is the day that we need the most people there to testify, or at least to just come be a spectator, even if you don't want to testify. You do still have to sign in as pro, against, or neutral. So even the more people we can get that don't want to talk but just want to show up, the better. So that's March 3rd, which is a Wednesday, if you're looking at your calendar. So, okay, a couple other questions here that did come through. Tim wants to know, what are the biggest hurdles to getting this passed as it should?
So that's a great question. So the hurdles are really somewhat on our side of the house, as well as just the processes that exist that are unicameral. Last year, we had the largest attendance of any hearing in NFOA's history, and I would almost say with some confidence in the unicameral's history. And that was a call to action that went statewide with a lot of grassroots partners. And we had almost 500 people show up to that hearing. It was incredible. Typically, the biggest hurdle is that we in Nebraska take for granted our rights and freedoms. We feel that we have elected individuals who have stated they're for the Second Amendment, and then we don't supervise them when our job as citizens are to supervise those we elect to represent us and represent our voice. And so what ends up happening is we have a lot of senators who, on paper or during their campaign, they appeared to be quite interested in keeping their oath of office and supporting the Second Amendment as well as all of our rights and freedoms. And yet what ends up happening when they're in office, they're what we call a Second Amendment, but. So unfortunately, the majority of bills related to firearms freedom get heard in the Judiciary Committee. And currently right now, there are really only 2 senators that I trust with representing our rights and freedoms. And the rest are on the record, definitely against keeping and preserving what we already have, let alone expanding what needs to be expanded. And so what ends up happening at these hearings is NFOA will, and our volunteers will show up. There's maybe 5 to 7 of us who can take time off of work from the board or our membership. And we testify on behalf of our members. And yet the antis, the Moms Demand Action, the Nebraskans Against Gun Violence, not sure what's going on with their schedules, but they can always attend these hearings in large groups. So it's really very difficult to counter the perspective of Nebraskans when we have such an imbalanced representation when we go to testify. So the first hurdle is for individuals to say, what does it take to preserve my freedoms? And if it's 8 hours of paid time off or unpaid time off to show up and make your voice heard, that's critical. That's the first hurdle. And that's just to get good bills out of committee or bad bills stuck in committee. So that's what we want. We want to kill it in committee if it's a bad bill, and we want to try to get it pulled out of committee if it's a good bill. The next hurdle, of course, is if it is brought forward out of committee, is either fighting for it or fighting against it across the entire set of senators, not just those in the committee. And so it takes a concerted and strategic and long-term effort by all citizens to constantly keep their senators informed about where they stand on any given bill.
All right. A couple other questions out here. We've got some people asking if this will apply to government buildings or places of worship. The way that the law is right now in Nebraska is you have a duty to retreat unless you're in your home or your place of work. And if this bill was passed, then that would extend also to your vehicle. But all of the other places that you would be, that does not extend to those places, whether you're worshiping, it doesn't matter what building you're in. If you don't work there or live there, then it doesn't extend to that. So is that correct, Keith?
That would be more of a stand your ground if that was what we were talking about. Right. Yeah, this is specific just for those 3 places.
Let's see. There's some other stuff that isn't necessarily Let me see here. Another one. Adam wanted to know if we can post a link to the list of committee members. Adam, I don't know if you're over on the Facebook side, but I can make sure that that gets posted there. And then we can post it over on the member forum as well on NFOA's website, and make sure that we get the list there along with contact info. We will find the best place where the most people can find that and get that up as soon as we can. Maybe not tonight, but as soon as we possibly can, we'll get those out to everybody.
Just to let Adam know and everyone else, I did comment on the YouTube side. It is the link to the Judiciary Committee page, which has the processes for submitting testimony, every single Judiciary Committee member, and how to contact them. I can repost it on the YouTube page right now.
There we go. Awesome. All right. Let's see. Did I have any other questions?
There was a really good question from Ralph.
Yes.
I just noticed which state senator sponsored LB 300 and who's against it. So that's a great question because obviously senators who propose good legislation we need to support, and those who vote against good legislation we need to hold accountable. So Senator Slama is the senator who proposed LB 300. She has worked with Nebraska Firearm Owners Association in the past on several other issues and bills. She has an excellent record of voting in alignment with her constitutional oath. I personally find her to be quite remarkable and refreshing at the state capitol. That being said, until a bill gets heard in committee, we can't tell you who's going to be against the bill until that committee vote has been accomplished. The committee vote is not made public, but it is publicly accessible. And what ends up happening is we have to actually call the clerk who handles that record keeping to request a copy of who voted for and against bringing a bill out of committee or keeping it in committee. So they can kill bills in committee so they're not brought forward to the floor of the legislature for debate. That's a great way for senators to basically stay off the record so that folks don't know just how anti-Second Amendment they are. And we're hoping to make that much more transparent going forward. So we will be publicizing how the Judiciary Committee members vote on each of these bills, so that you can be an informed voter. Once the bills actually get out of committee and go to the floor, that's where we can keep a better record of the debate, how that debate is being handled, who's proposing what amendments and those kinds of things, so you can really understand whether or not the senator you have in your district represents you.
Very good. And let me put this up on the screen for those of you who aren't on the YouTube side. The website to get to the Judiciary Committee is news.legislature.ne.gov/JUD. So you can get there and get to all of those folks from that angle as well. All right, so we've got some great comments, and a lot of it is just folks weighing in, and we're not going to have time to get all of the comments and up there on the screen, but the questions I will try to get up there the best that I can. Let me see here. Somebody wanted to know what the number of this bill. This is LB 300 that we're discussing right now. All right. If there aren't any other questions on LB 300, Trish or Keith, do either of you have anything else that you want to add before we move to the next bill?
No, as you know, we have a lot to cover today, and the questions have been great. So we want to keep things moving. We do welcome all of you. If this is of value, obviously it's wonderful that you've joined us on YouTube and Facebook, but I have to make this pitch. If you're not a member of the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association, then I can't be your voice. If you can't take time off work, when I go to testify as president of the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association, the power of all your voices are behind me. And as our membership grows and expands, so does our power and our ability to influence what's happening at the state capitol. We have thousands of members in Nebraska, and if you're not a member, you're missing out because our membership is free. We provide you information such as this, but we also send out legislative updates via email so that you can spend time reading and studying and becoming an informed voter on what affects your rights. So before we move on to the next bill, I just had to say, go to www.nebraskafirearms.org, click join, and join us now.
Let me just put that up here real quick as we're going through. And let me just say this too before we move on. When we have a bill that goes to either to committee or to the floor, and we have people take time off their jobs and go to the Capitol building and testify, like Trish said, I mean, you might get 4 or 5 people, maybe as many as 6 or 7 or almost a dozen at sometimes that show up on behalf of either NFOA or just to testify the same, either pro or against the whatever we would do. Now we can go there and Trish is very good about getting time off and going in and representing us in the Capitol building. And she can say that we have almost 10,000 members right now, and she speaks for all of us. But somebody showing up and speaking for 10,000 people versus 1,000 people showing up in person and either wanting to testify or just showing up and again signing in to just watch this and signing in as for this bill. I mean, that speaks way louder than Trish saying she represents 10,000 members. So don't think that it's only the NFOA that can do this. That this only works if we have everybody's help, because we're not the gun lobby here. You are the gun lobby. We are just the ones that try and get the information out to you as the gun lobby. And we do have a few folks that are registered as official lobbyists, but they're not the only ones that do the work. So, all right. Having said all that, Trish, would you tell us about LB 116 next?
Yeah, my pleasure. All righty. So LB 116, the bill is titled to change provisions relating to handgun transfer certificates and requires suicide prevention training and informational materials. Now, what could be wrong with a bill with that type of title? Well, unfortunately, if you pay attention to what's happened over the course of the years, you'll notice that many senators will try to title a bill in such a way as it doesn't grab people's attention, so that people don't become informed voters, so they don't show up at the committee, so they aren't concerned about what these bills are actually trying to do. But Senator McCollister, who just keeps trying, bless his heart, kudos to him for endurance, but he's still failing incredibly short on trying to create an impact in what he attempts to infer this bill is attempting to solve. But some of you may remember that he had proposed a bill last year, and he's basically stripped a majority of the most embarrassing content from LB 816 and reintroduced it as LB 116. His previous bill was so full of misinformation and ignorance and bad policy disguised as a misleading bill title as an attempt to reduce suicide, that by the time it was heard, over 500 people attended that hearing to shoot it down. And that's basically because we had been leveraging the work and energy of having fought the red flag bill by Senator Moorfeld the year before and in that current session. And by the time his bill came up for a hearing, Nebraskans were just plumb tired of focusing on having these ill-advised and poorly crafted, non-data driven hyperbole being written into bills. So in a nutshell, what does LB 116 does? Well, it creates a waiting period, a mandatory delay between the time you apply and submit your application for a firearm purchase certificate and the time that they can actually provide you one. So prior to COVID, many of us who went to go get a purchase certificate could walk into our sheriff's office, fill out the application, give them our $5. They would go to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, do our background check, which basically works at the speed of light because it's one of the few things at the government level that works quickly, find out that you have no prohibiting factors, and you would get issued this purchase certificate, which says you've successfully passed a background check and you meet all the requirements in order to be a firearm owner. And you can go to your favorite FFL, your favorite range, or go do a personal purchase and buy a handgun. So this actually would delay the amount of time so that it could not be given to you earlier than 48 hours after the application is received. So there'd be a minimum of a 48-hour waiting period. It would also increase the permit fee from $5 to $10 to cover the cost of the criminal history background check. But if anyone ever has worked for an FFL, the amount of time it takes to run a background check can be literally minutes. And so I'm not sure why they're saying the cost needs to go up from an administrative perspective, but he wants to increase the fee from $5 to $10. The additional part about this bill is that the mailing deadline, instead of them having 3 days to mail it out, they'd have up to 5 days to mail it out, which could mean your 48-hour period of waiting could be up to 5 days to wait for this. Now, those who say this is just common gun control legislation, we're just trying to prevent wackos from quickly being able to get guns. Well, here's the issue. The primary people that this is going to affect are the individuals who, for the life of them, never thought they'd face a threat in their life. And then one night or one day they face a situation where they have a domestic violence situation purported against them. They all of a sudden have a stalker, what have you, or they have a frightening encounter with a violent criminal actor, and all of a sudden their lives change and they want that firearm now in order to protect themselves. Those individuals are now going to have to wait between 48 hours to up to 5 days in order to secure the tool that's going to protect them and their families. Additionally, this bill would also add some materials that would be given to every individual getting this permit. That would be suicide prevention materials and firearm safety. So resources out in the community for individuals seeking help to prevent and reduce the number of suicides that exist within the firearm community. And that's a wonderful thing. Most of us have no issue with that whatsoever. The additional add to this, though, is that this bill would put into the concealed handgun permit curriculum a portion of content for concealed handgun permit instructors to actually teach about suicide prevention to their students. Again, it's a feel-good attempt to help reduce suicide within the firearm community. Whether or not it would have any impact or not, that's really subject to much further discussion. But I don't know that many concealed carry instructors, even myself included, are necessarily prepared nor ready to address that type of topic without a lot more training than just sticking it into our PowerPoint slide saying, here are resources to combat suicide. So our biggest issue with LB 116 is that mandatory waiting period. We find that to be just another infringement on our rights and the ability of people to secure a tool when they need it.
All right. So we've got a couple questions out there. First and foremost, before I get to those, I want to ask my own question because it's been several years now since I went and got a handgun purchase permit that wasn't my CHP. But last time I did that here in the city of Norfolk. And in the city of Norfolk, if you live within city limits, you don't have to go to the courthouse, which is over in Madison. You can go to Norfolk Police Department and apply and receive the handgun purchase permit. I applied. They said, wait here. And after about 10 or 15 minutes, they came back, asked me for my $5 and gave me my permit right through the window. So would this make that to where they would in turn have to mail that out as well? Or
Correct.
would I still be able to get it in person that day?
No, you would have, it's a minimum 48 hours.
And it would have to come through the mail.
Correct.
And it couldn't, so minimum 48 hours just to put it in the mail. And we all know that you don't get same day delivery.
Correct.
Ever, even if you mail
Nope.
something across town.
Mm-hmm. And the 48 hours is the minimum. They would have up to 5 days to mail it to you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, Scott wants to know, is that 5 days or 5 business days? Because that could potentially make it a week.
Yeah, that's the thing that's interesting. I don't recall it being business days in the actual language of the bill. So yeah, his point could be heard. It could be literally 7 days, right?
Yeah.
Depending on how they want to interpret it.
Over on Facebook, Kelly wants to know, what is the reason for the delay? Is it because purchases have increased due to fear? Does it say really in the language of the bill why this was even proposed?
No, and Kelly, that is an absolutely great question. So we who have been involved in Second Amendment lobbying and education efforts often find that in many ways, when we work with a senator to craft language to pursue a bill, the antis also will work with senators to craft language to pursue a bill. But there are also those who I wouldn't say are anti, but say they're really, really focused on reducing suicide. So they might be a nonprofit organization who has been told that if they could reduce or lengthen the amount of time between the idea of getting a firearm and someone being able to get that firearm, they would be able to reduce suicide, since suicide can be a very spontaneous decision. And so there is this idea that if we could just delay it by 24 hours, 48 hours, 3 days, 5 days, that the person would change their mind between the time of their first, oh, I'm going to go get a gun today to go take my own life, and a week later they've changed their mind. So that often can be where a piece of legislation or a portion of legislation language can be put into a bill. The issue, though, is that that's just one group's perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And there's the remainder of us, and having been affected by suicide myself, I can understand the emotional intent of it, but the logical intent, I don't. There are far more individuals who find themselves desperately in need of a device that could protect them and save their lives than the number of folks who purchase a firearm for the sole purpose of suicide. And so we are basically putting a Band-Aid on an aortic bleed of an issue that doesn't affect the firearm community any more so than the general community. And so we need to be careful that we don't do causation and correlation issues with looking at solving problems. And so that's what's happening there.
Okay. And then one other question Robert wants to know, would this be only for the first firearm? And I think I understand what he's getting at, because I'm not going to tell anybody what I have or how many I have, but clearly I own firearms. And I'll say this much. I own more than one firearm. I have more than one firearm in my home. So if there was a mandatory waiting period to go and purchase another firearm, would this only apply to the first one? The reason that he's asking that is if the whole purpose of this is to give me time to rethink the plan, whether the plan would be for somebody to do something bad to themselves or to do something bad to somebody else. The cooling off period is what they want to call this. Well, if you already have a firearm in your home, then what good does this do at all? Because there already are firearms accessible. So why make somebody wait for another one?
Correct. I think that's a perfect example of why this language or this bill won't work to address the concerns that they have. It's only going to affect those who are pursuing the permit for the first time or to renew it, right? So these individuals may or may not already have firearms. I know many people who've let their permit expire and then they go get it again when they want to buy, because it's $5, no big deal, just do the background check. So from that perspective, they're really not addressing the root cause of suicide. They're not addressing the needs for mental health within the entire community, not even just those of us who own firearms, because it's the easy solution. And I dislike easy solutions. To use a metaphor, an analogy that works really great today, we wanted to stop global warming, so let's invest in green energy. And now we have green energy that doesn't heat our houses right now, and so we're having rolling blackouts. So a lot of good intentions within legislation, when the proverbial cold front hits the fan, they don't work very well.
Yeah,
very, very true. And then one last question. Go ahead, Keith.
I was going to say, too, that it is a 5 business day waiting period. So just so that is clear, it is 5 business days, not just 5 days.
So potentially Saturday and Sunday not counting, we could be effectively
can't forget that.
Or it is President's Day, and again, whether you like the president or not, I do hope that everybody is praying for the president to do the best job that he can. Some of the things that we're about to talk about here in a little bit are even more important since he came out with a statement earlier yesterday too. So real quick here, Karen makes a great question. Just to clarify, is the waiting period for purchasing a firearm or just to purchase the permit in LB 116?
Just for the purchase permit, not for purchasing a firearm.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. And
right. So that's LB 16. Again, paying attention to what a bill actually says is really important, because just the title doesn't work to really help you understand whether or not it's a good or bad bill.
Yep, exactly. Okay, real quick here, I just got a couple things that I want to, or one thing I want to touch on before we move to the next bill. Did you know that as the only state with a unicameral, we citizens have no representatives, no Nebraska House of Representatives? We just have the senators. That means it's up to us to represent ourselves, make our voices heard, because in the state of Nebraska, you and I are the second house. The people are the second house in our government. So when we send out calls to action, make sure you do your jobs, all of you and us too, and represent yourself, represent the future of our Second Amendment rights and our freedoms. And when you see these calls to action, we're not asking for money. We're not telling you the sky is falling, and unless you send us $25, you're going to lose all your rights. This is an organization that wants you to help us do the work, and we will help you find out what that is, what you can do, and how to do it. But again, like I said before, this only works if we get all of you to help us as well. If we can get all 10,000 of our members to make their voices heard, then there's not a senator in that building that's not willing to listen to us. But we all have to be on the same page, and that's what we as an organization are working toward, is getting everybody on the same page together. So, all right, Trish, let's go to the next one here. You actually, you are a licensed instructor for concealed carry classes. Mm-hmm. So there are I think there's more than one bill right now that will affect those of us who either have or are considering going and getting our CHP, our concealed handgun permit. So would you tell us about the bills that will affect concealed carriers?
Sure. So the first one is LB 85. This would basically require the Nebraska State Patrol to provide you a notice that your concealed handgun permit is going to expire. So many of us who have driver's licenses in Nebraska receive this nice little notification in the mail about in a letter that our driver's license is going to expire. We get the same kind of notification for renewing our registration. And so this bill would basically require the Nebraska State Patrol to become as good as the DMV insofar as letting you know, hey, you might want to renew your permit. Some great conversations were had about this renewal process. They would basically send you a letter about 4 months, which is the earliest you can actually renew your permit online. It wouldn't be in a letter that would indicate that it's about your concealed handgun permit, because if many of you don't know, the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association was actually successful in getting a bill passed that prevents your concealed handgun permit status from being released in any public way by the government. So you wouldn't get a postcard that says, hey, renew your concealed handgun permit. It would actually be in a letter addressed to you. You would have to open it in order to see that it's your renewal notice from the Nebraska State Patrol. So LB 85, great bill, super easy. What will be really interesting is seeing how many anti-2A people will actually testify against this bill. They literally want nothing that benefits a gun owner to get passed. But it is interesting listening to them try to propose like why that's a bad idea. Another bill.
Can I just say real quick, just speaking from my own personal experience, it wasn't until I was looking over the list of laws, the bills that had been introduced in this session, and I saw this one, and I read that, and I thought to myself, gosh, I need to check and see when mine expires. And so I pulled it out, and here it's expiring here in another month or two. So that actually prompted me to send in my renewal. But
Awesome.
yeah, had it not been for this, I may have been one of these people who let it lapse and didn't even realize it.
Twice. I've had to take the concealed class 3 times because I keep forgetting about it.
The good news is I know more than one instructor, so getting the class is not going to be an issue. I just don't want to have to go through. That's an expense that nobody actually should have to go through unless they choose to take more classes, more training.
Sure.
So
right, it's already cost prohibitive already. The fact that our rights have a fee associated with their exercise is disgusting to me. So those of you who are commenting about constitutional carry, I totally get it. Utah just did it. So many other states in the Midwest do. What's up with Nebraska? But
yeah,
why is because we are just too Nebraska nice and we don't assert ourselves. So let's assert ourselves, Nebraska. Let's get these laws changed.
We all know the saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? For too long, the wrong wheel's been squeaking, and the other 3 wheels have just been going along to get along, and it's time that ended. And I also let's just keep going. So that's not the only bill that's going to affect us.
So LB 244 would actually be, I call it a kindness bill. It would allow for a grace period. So if you're looking at your concealed handgun permit and it's 2 days after the permit has expired, currently right now there's no grace period. There's like, sorry, Charlie, take the class again, pay the fees for that, then do the application, go get it notarized again, and then pay the $100 to the state. This would actually allow for a 30-day grace period. So like if you did the oopsie, you'd be able to get online and say, hey, I really wanted to renew this. Let me renew it. So again, LB 244 would enact a grace period of 30 days for your renewal of your concealed handgun permit. The next bill related to the concealed handgun permit is really interesting. So when I read it at first, I'm like, this is awesome. LB 404 would change the permit and renewal time period under the Concealed Handgun Permit Act. And so instead of a 5-year permit, it would be a 10-year permit. So you wouldn't have to renew or pay for renewal except for every 10 years. And so at first I thought this was awesome. Great job, whoever wrote that bill. And then we found out that many of us use our concealed handgun permit instead of the permit to purchase or the firearms purchase certificate when we're buying our firearms, because the concealed handgun permit acts as proof of your background check, and FFLs use that to verify that you've passed one. Because it would extend it past the 5 years, our Nebraska concealed handgun permit would no longer be recognized by the federal government as being a evidence of your successful background check. So you would have to go get another purchase certificate every 3 years, because our CHP would no longer be valid for purchasing. So it's kind of a pro and con situation. Do you really want to have a 10-year permit, or do you like the fact that you can buy firearms with your concealed handgun permit instead of the purchase certificate? So unfortunately, there's, in my opinion, I'd rather just renew every 5 because that purchase certificate is made out of such flimsy paper that it often gets torn before you can even use it to buy a few handguns. So LB 404 is changing the CHP from 5 to 10. And that's why it's important to be connected to NFOA as we dig deeper and we find out really what's good and bad about a bill so you can make an informed decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there was another bill that I really want Keith to talk about. Keith, this is one I know you care deeply. It's LB 173, which would be to change provisions relating to carrying a concealed weapon. And I think most people are going to be shocked to find out that the standard way most of us take our firearms to the range, and if we have no concealed handgun permit, we're currently possibly breaking the law. So can you tell us more about what this bill is about?
Yeah, this one, LB 173, it fixes an issue that, not on purpose, mind you, but I kind of blew it up about 4 or 5 years ago. I had a case in Richardson County where an individual was convicted of carrying a concealed weapon. I appealed it. We had it overturned on appeal, and then the state appealed that to the Supreme Court. And basically, the Supreme Court came back with an opinion that said that any weapon, not just handgun, but any weapon is considered concealed in your vehicle if it's within basically the passenger compartment of your vehicle. So the only way to legally carry any kind of weapon, a knife, a handgun, a rifle, a shotgun, is to either have it in the open, so it's an open carry, have it laying in your seat, laying on the dash. That is legal because open carry is legal in your vehicle. But if you have it in a case, which in my case out of Richardson County, he had it in a case tucked into the back corner of his vehicle where he could not reach it. And the Supreme Court basically said it doesn't matter if it's in the passenger compartment of a vehicle, even if it's in a case, it's a concealed weapon. And so basically at that point, and that was 2016, I think, is when that decision came down. Since that time, it's basically been the officer's discretion as to how they want to move forward with that. So whenever if you're out pheasant hunting and you have your shotgun, even if it is completely in the back of your SUV, if it's still in what's considered a passenger compartment, even if there is no way for you to get to it while you're driving, it's still a concealed weapon.
Yeah, that's a really concerning thing, Keith, because I drive a Suburban, right? And yes, there's been a time where I didn't have a concealed carry permit, but I was pursuing it. I was training, right? And I was trying to get trained. So I'd go to the range all the time. And I had my range bag with my ammunition in its boxes and the firearms in the different pouch. And I'd go to the range. And so many people don't have concealed handgun permits because they don't care to. And yet they're going to the range and breaking the law. The other part that I found concerning was about my lunch bag, right? So if I have a nice Omaha steak and I take the leftovers to lunch the next day and I have a steak knife in my lunch bag, that's considered, carrying a concealed weapon illegally, even though I have it in the back. So that's really, really kind of scary for most folks, not realizing that because of the Supreme Court ruling, standard average stuff that we do is against the law.
Right. And it hasn't really, I haven't seen much of an impact where people are getting arrested for this kind of thing. But the fact that it's basically the officer's discretion, we don't need it to be the officer's discretion. We need to have a statute that specifically lays out what is and what is not a concealed weapon. One of the problems I have with this bill is that it does address issues with firearms, but it doesn't go into all the other things that are considered weapons under the statute, such as knives or brass knuckles and that kind of thing. Those are not going to be covered by LD 173. So you have to understand that this is kind of a stopgap fix to at least take care of the firearm issue, because that's probably going to have the biggest effect on most people. Most officers, they're not going to care if you have a knife in your, in the back seat of your car. They're not going to care about that. But if you have an AR in the back of your car, now that might be a different story. So it at least addresses that and cleans up the statute a little bit.
A little bit.
I don't think it still really does what it needs to do to completely solve the problem, but at least it gets us at least one step further. There's been a version of this introduced for the last couple of years, and it's never really went anywhere, which was kind of, I guess I'm not sure why there's opposition to this, especially because this is something that if it's going to be abused, it's going to be abused in minority areas, North Omaha, South Omaha. They're going to be the ones that are going to be jumping all over this rather than somebody out in rural Nebraska. So I'm not sure why there's any resistance to a bill like this to try and fix the statute, but that's where we're at. That's a great,
Keith, I'll tell you, I testified for that bill the last time it was introduced, And it was a historical moment because the president of the Nebraska Against Gun Violence and myself testified on the same side. Our organization and their organization were for this change because forcing people to carry their guns in the open from the parking lot of the range to the range makes no sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just totally unreasonable that you can't have your firearm in a case to carry it. It just makes no sense. And so it was a historical moment. I remember that strongly. She remarked, I said, well, yeah, see, even we can get along, you know? And so for it to not have come out of the committee at that time, well, that just kind of shows you that sometimes the folks that represent us are not listening. And we have to be louder and more repetitive and more consistent in all facets of our communication. So it's not just at the hearing, it's the phone calls, it's the emails, it's in the show up in their office and discuss these bills with them. We need to make sure they understand that, yeah, no, this is important to us and we're not letting go.
Yeah, and for those that think that the way the statute's currently written, if you think your concealed handgun permit is going to protect you, it's not. Your handgun permit is for a handgun only.
Mm-hmm.
Your shotgun isn't covered by it. Your rifle's not covered by it.
Mm-hmm.
Any other what's considered under the statute a deadly weapon is not covered by it. It's just your handgun.
Yeah.
So your handgun permit is not going to cover you unless you have a handgun. But a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have a concealed carry permit, and they're just going to be out of luck if that officer decides that day he's gonna write you up for it.
Yeah,
and that is it's a class 1 misdemeanor. A second offense is a felony.
Right. And Chris here on Facebook has a great question. We have a concealed handgun permit in Nebraska. We do not have a CCW. So he was asking about having a concealed knife, right? A concealed knife with your CHP is not legal. The length of a knife has to be what, 3.5 inches or less?
Yep. Anything with a blade more than 3.5 inches, if it's concealed, is illegal. So if you those of you that remember the show Sons of Anarchy, one of the main characters always had a K-bar knife strapped on his belt. And in the state of Nebraska, if you've got a knife with a blade that long and you don't open carry it, then you are in violation of the law.
Right.
It's okay to have it. It's okay as long as it's visible. And if any part's visible, it's not concealed.
Right.
But
you
yeah,
don't want to cover it up with a jacket either.
Right. Yeah, don't leave that on your belt and then put your coveralls on over it this time of year. So that even falls under, I've got a backpack full of hunting gear and I've got, skinning knives and whatnot in there that I never realized until I was looking at this again, that I'm technically breaking a law if I've got those in my backpack in the back of my SUV, because I don't have a vehicle that's got a separate compartment. I can't put them in a trunk in my Expedition.
Yeah, I just recently had a client who was, we ended up making a plea deal, but he was charged with carrying a concealed weapon because he had a pair of brass knuckles in a duffel bag in the back of his car. Mm-hmm. There's no way around it. It was outside of his reach, which is what the standard used to be, was if it's within your reach, then it can be considered concealed carry, concealed weapon. But that Supreme Court decision absolutely blew that out of the water.
All right. I think,
Right.
Okay. So I've got a question out here, and Jennifer wants to know, and I think I know what you mean, Jennifer. If we come to the meeting, what's the best way to prepare? And then Jennifer added to speak. So I think by meeting, Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, what your meeting is NFOA Day on March 3rd at the Capitol building. So if somebody's coming and they want to testify, what's the best way for them to prepare?
Great question. Well, obviously today, attending this town hall is your first step, right? Getting informed about what the bills are. By being a member of NFOA, you will get emails on our legislative updates, which provide you a synopsis of the bill. What's it about? How does it affect your rights? What's good and bad about it? Also links directly to the bill so that you can read it yourself and be informed. And then we have little workshops. Sometimes we have them online. Sometimes we have them via email on best practices for crafting your testimony, putting together your message, how to discuss things with your senator. So our job as NFOA is to not only advance firearms freedom and lobby for you, is to educate you as well. So making you as equipped and empowered as possible to make your voice be heard. So what I'm planning on doing is asking our director of media and the rest of the team for us to host another online town hall with the specific topic of how to prepare for and submit testimony, either in person, email, over the phone, or what have you. A lot of us have not done this before, and it can be really stressful and even intimidating. I used to really hold senators and elected officials up on a pedestal until I got to know them. And the reality is they're just normal people, and some of them are subhuman. So you get used to working with them.
And in fairness, if you run for public office, then you leave yourself open to opinions. All right. Keep in mind, we don't only represent the NFOA here. We also are people, and we have opinions, and there are some things that are going on out in the comment section that I agree with a lot of what's being said, but as a representative of this organization, and since we are not a lot of people know all the rules, and I don't know all of them myself yet, but we are a 501c4 organization. We have certain things that we're not allowed to do, and certain things that as representatives of NFOA we're not allowed to say, at least not in public. And so just because I'm not commenting and putting all these comments up here doesn't mean that we don't agree with you personally. It's just in the interest of protecting everybody involved, we're going to let the comments be in the section, and the questions I'll try to get over here onto the screen to the best of my ability if they don't pass me by here. I had a couple others here that we're going to let me see here. I know I lost a question, and let's kind of keep going. Oh, there was Kelly. I saw your question out there. That's what I saw your question, Kelly, and we will get there. It's not time yet. We're still covering the bills that are going to the Judiciary Committee, and your question actually falls under a bill for a different committee. So we'll get there, I promise. So in the interest of saving some time, let's just keep moving along here. Let's see. We've got a couple other bills, Keith, that are affecting not only Nebraskans with concealed handgun permits, but anybody who owns or wants to own a firearm will be affected by a couple of these. So would you talk to us about LB 118 and LB 13?
Right. LB 118, they did already have the hearing on this. I think it was February 5th, but that was to change the duration of a harassment, sexual assault, or domestic abuse protection order. The change that they want to do, currently they're in effect for 1 year. They want to change the duration to 5 years. So instead of having, if you don't know, if you have any of those protection orders against you, generally you are not allowed to, one of the provisions is that you cannot possess a firearm or ammunition most of the time as well. So they're trying to extend that to 5 years. Right now, the way it is, if you go through the process and get a protection order to get someone, and it is granted by the court, if you have a hearing and the court affirms its ex parte order, the protection order is in place for 1 year. What that does then is, for that 1 year, you cannot own or possess a firearm or ammunition. What this bill would do is extend that from 1 year to 5 years. So basically, you would be in a situation where if you had the protection order taken out against you, instead of not being able to possess or own a firearm for 1 year, that's extended to 5 years. There's no way to get around that. About the only thing that would get rid of that is if the person that took out the protection order against you comes back in and has it dismissed. But that sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't, and you're pretty much waiting for them to do something with it. So that would extend the period of time that you would legally not be allowed to own or possess a firearm from 1 to 5 years. Obviously, a lot of things can change over a 5-year period. Possibly you were, I've seen quite a few of these where, you're in a bad relationship, things happen, you get a protection order against you. After a year or 2 years, you went on, moved on, things are fine, no issues, but that protection order is still in place, and you cannot own or possess a firearm until that protection order is up in 5 years. The other thing that bill does, currently when someone takes out a protection order or initially files for a protection order, they have to do an affidavit that explains why they want the protection order, all the problems that they're having, if there's any violence, basically explain to the judge why you want the protection order. And that has to be a notarized affidavit that the court does take into evidence. This bill would change that, so you wouldn't have to have that notarized. It would just be an attestment that you would put on the end of it saying, everything I said was true. You don't have to sign it in front of anyone else. It doesn't have to have any notary. It doesn't have to be notarized. You just sign it saying, well, yeah, what I said is true. Then again, that is accepted by the court, taken into evidence as basically your evidence to get the protection order put in place. It's one of the few situations where you're not even under oath for what you say in that is, well, what they're trying to change it to is you wouldn't even have to be under any kind of oath. You would basically just take that statement that you didn't swear to the court, you didn't swear to a notary, you didn't swear to anybody. You just said, yeah, what I'm saying is true. But it's a different standard because every court case, whenever something is entered into evidence at a court hearing, the judge is going to put that person under oath and make sure that they swear that what they're doing is the truth. But this basically takes that away because under the statute, the information that they write to get the protection order is automatically taken into evidence. So this is going into evidence with no oath, nothing like that. You can say whatever you want. And I've seen quite a few of these, and you would not believe some of the things people write in this stuff, even though they are actually swearing under an oath to a notary. But it can be pretty crazy, some of the stuff that you see. But again, you're looking at getting it extended out from 1 year to 5 years. And there's no way you can, on your side of it, get it rescinded. It can only be rescinded by the person that took it out. So you're out of luck for 5 years on that one, which is, I find it kind of odd, though, that the same people that want to, that are supporting this bill, where they're going to extend it to 5 years that you can't possess a firearm, they're also the same ones that are wanting you to not be able to get the handgun purchase permit within a reasonable amount of time. They feel that this piece of paper you're going to get as a protection order is going to somehow protect you, as opposed to actually getting a firearm to protect you. So the two just don't line up. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what their thinking is on that. But anyway, I just thought it was kind of odd that, they feel that this piece of paper is going to protect you, but they don't want you to go out and get a firearm in a short amount of time to be able to actually protect yourself from someone. Well, the other one that we were looking at was LB 13.
Before we go to 13, can I just throw this up here real quick? Adam wants to know, what's the argument for the extension to 5 years for a protection order? Did they give any reasoning for this?
I haven't really seen any reasoning. Yeah. I know there's a lot of states that protection orders in other states run from anywhere from 90 days up. You can, in some states, get a lifetime protection order against somebody. And I think the idea is just, well, Nebraska's only a year. Why can't we do 5? The idea is it's traumatic to the person that is getting the protection order to have to come in every year and get it renewed, because they can come in after a year before it expires. They can basically go in front of the judge and say, everything that was happening before is still happening. I need another year, and the judge will grant them another year. And the idea is that it's somehow traumatic for that person to come in every year to get it extended. So we'll just make it 5 years. Then they only have to come in every 5 years to get it extended. I think that's the idea of it, but I don't think it really holds much water. It's
Never
it's
mind
not
the
really
fact
much
that
of a burden to do that.
it tramples upon citizens' rights.
So I think it's important to watch, our history, right? So one of the things that we talked about earlier is how Senator McCollister's bill is a sampled or recycled version of a previous bill. And the person who put forward this bill is Senator Moorfeld. Senator Moorfeld put forth the red flag bill that we successfully defeated 2 years ago. From getting passed out to the body for debate. And in the red flag bill, he had basically completely did away with due process as we understood it, did away with innocent until proven guilty as we understand it, all these constitutional rights. And when we balance rights between the right of the victim to have a legal remedy to enhance their protection, whether you believe in protection orders or not, they serve a purpose under the law to clearly define there's a greater crime committed when you hurt someone who has a protection order against you. All of our laws are rack and stack. The more laws you break, the more time you serve. That's how we kind of understand how they work. When you take the protection order concept, what a viscerally and emotionally charged topic. Protection orders, victims of domestic violence, victims of stalking, victims of sexual harassment. How horrible would it be to make those people submit whatever they have to do to renew it, after they've already done it once? And so it's a emotionally charged topic. And anyone who's against allowing them to just have a 5-year protection order can be besmirched and put under the microscope as being an unfeeling and uncaring person. You just want your guns, and you just want to be able to have your guns, and you don't care about victims. So it's purposeful, it's strategic. Senator Moorfeld is basically taking his red flag law, changed it, put it underneath the protection order landscape, and now you have basically a red flag law without the red flag in it, right? Because it doesn't specify as much about the firearm stuff. It just uses the firearm prohibition power of the protection order to do what he intended to do last time, and we fought. So they're very sneaky, they're very smart, but so are we. And so I'll have to counter that. I believe it's actually a very pinpointed attempt to sneak red flag underneath our radar.
Right. And you're still dealing with the burden of proof for a protection order, which is only a preponderance of the evidence. It is such a low burden. It's really the only way that you can have a constitutional right taken away without really due process.
Correct. And it's so interesting how, because it's emotional, because we're talking about victims, and you know what? I've been a victim of blah, blah, blah in my life, whatever. Okay, that's me. I've had my issues. I had my instances where somebody did something bad to me. The last thing I want is special treatment where my rights trump yours. I find that to be just completely wrong. And so from the perspective of needing to provide some evidence, when I read this bill, I immediately thought how easy it could be to take my boyfriend's phone, text myself a whole bunch of evil messages, right? And then me messaging him back and having an argument. But it's with I have both their phones. And then I delete the text messages from him so he never knows he sent it to me. And then I send screen captures of those text messages through this online email system as the preponderance of the evidence. And guess who's getting a knock on their door? I mean, if that's literally the level of ease that it takes to restrict someone's rights, that's completely beneath the legal standard of due process that we as citizens understand. And it's quite scary when you think how little the government and those who work within the government actually respect the rights as guaranteed under the Constitution. And so we need to stay very mindful because it's sinister. They love to twist our words. They love to besmirch us. And we have to stand our ground, people, and be willing to take whatever comes from having a conversation about whether or not this is a right way to provide safety nets for those who need it and still respect the rule of law and constitutional rights.
Absolutely. And let me just add too that when it comes to discussing some of these bills, there are bills that we want to see passed and there are bills that we want to see blocked. And we've listed out, some of each here, and we're not done yet, but it's very, very important when you look at a bill to not only look at what they say it does, but also look at what it gives the potential for as well, right? Because nobody on this panel, and I don't think anybody out there in the chat wants to look somebody in the eye who's been traumatized by some sort of incident and tell them that, nobody feels like we don't care about their feelings. That's not the case. And that's not what we're saying here. What we're saying, what Trish just said is, despite the fact that this could do a lot of good in the lives of some of these people who have been victimized, and we want to recognize that that would be a good thing, but the potential to misuse this and the potential to hurt people and to take the rights away from people who really haven't done anything wrong, the potential is so great that the law that looks good at face value, when you start digging into it, hey, this isn't really all that good after all, or it could end up very bad. And that's the reason why we oppose such a thing. It has nothing to do with not wanting to validate those folks. Their feelings are very real, and we get that, and we agree with that. Mm-hmm. And the last thing that we want is to traumatize somebody, but at the expense of taking away the rights of somebody who doesn't deserve to lose them. I mean, that's why we have a constitution in place. That's why we have things like due process, so that we don't have that happen. And the potential to skirt due process is too great in a law like this.
No, and John, you make an excellent point. Instead of focusing on what really needs to happen, which is supporting victims, maybe having some greater emphasis within our society, programs, nonprofits, to help them overcome what they've experienced. We don't want to put our money where our mouth is when it comes to solving problems. And the easiest way to attempt to look like you're doing something is doing what they're doing right now with just restricting and trying to pass feel-good legislation. So.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to just blame something or someone else and pass the buck, and then pass a law that only affects people that are willing to follow laws. Yeah. Instead of addressing the root of the issue. And yeah, it's a lot easier to put a Band-Aid on a wound than it is to actually just, fix what's broken in the first place.
Well, one of the things I want to do right now is just summarize where we are right now. The bills that we've presented to you are going to be heard March 3rd. March 3rd in the Judiciary Committee room, which is room 1113 on the first floor of the state capitol. We are going to continue to present information on our Facebook, YouTube, and other social media channels about these hearings. There's going to be a set of hearings that start at 9:30 a.m. and another that starts after lunch, like at 1:30 p.m. All of these bills that we've just discussed are going to be heard. And when we say it's heard in committee, that means the senator who's introduced the bill is going to come in. They're going to introduce the bill, and they're going to give their little spiel about why they want this bill passed. Then individuals who are for the bill, against the bill, or neutral to the bill, citizens, can testify. Testifying is 3 minutes of your life, but those 3 minutes might have the most impact you've ever had as far as making an impact as a citizen. And so, yes, we're asking you to take the day off. But when it comes to your rights and freedoms, what's a day off from work if you can afford it? If you can't take the day off work, and there are many of us who can't, there are other ways for you to make your voices heard. So Number one, become a member of Nebraska Firearm Owners. It's nebraskafirearms.org. Membership is free. Number two, watch our Facebook and social media pages and learn about how you can submit testimony, not only just to the committee so that it's on the record, but to each and every committee member. You cannot take for granted that submitting it to the committee head is going to make sure that every committee member reads it. You need to communicate to them over and over and over again. They need to know we're watching and we're taking this seriously. It's NFOA Day at the state capitol. It's an event on our Facebook page. Click it, put yourself out there as a reminder. The next bill that we're going to talk about next really goes to Kelly's question. We all know what's happening at the federal level. Many of us have heard about HR 127.
Hold on. We didn't give Keith a chance to talk about LB 13.
Do
we want?
Okay. LB 13
I can do
is
it real quick. That's
Yeah.
pretty easy.
Yeah, and then we'll be done with what's going to be heard in judiciary.
okay.
Yeah, LB 13, basically that is a redundant statute that I wasn't really able to figure out what the point of it actually was going to be, but it's basically a statute to prohibit possession of deadly weapon of a person subject to a foreign domestic violence protection order. So if somebody has a protection order in, say, Missouri, they come into Nebraska, that protection order is still valid in Nebraska. There's already a state statute that addresses this, that gives foreign protection orders full authority in Nebraska. There's also on the federal level, full faith and credit in the Constitution. It's going to be valid in Nebraska as well. So I was trying to figure out what exactly their point of this was. And what I'm getting is the way they have it worded, it prohibits possession of a deadly weapon. Most domestic violence orders will just specifically address firearms. I think they're sneaking in the deadly weapon one because then that also includes knives, brass knuckles, everything else that's considered a deadly weapon, not just firearms. So it would actually be putting more restrictions in Nebraska on somebody with a foreign protection order that didn't even address that. If you had a protection order out of Missouri that says you can't have firearms, you come into Nebraska, now you can't have firearms, you can't have knives, you can't have brass knuckles. It puts an additional burdens on there that weren't even in place from where the order came from. That is the only thing that I could see that made any sense, because like I said, it's already covered by a current Nebraska statute that a protection order from another state is going to have full credit in Nebraska as well. That's the only thing that I could see on that one. Otherwise, it seemed redundant both at federal and state level.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
They often like to get credit for basically regurgitating other state statute content, and then they get credit as if it's an original idea. That happens a lot too.
All right. So again, those are bills that'll be heard by Judiciary Committee, and are the majority or all of these, are they all going to be heard on March 3rd, or is most of them?
All of them are on March 3rd.
Okay. All of those that we've talked about so far will be heard that day. I don't see a reason why we can't have one more online town hall before that happens and discuss the right way to if you're going to submit something in writing or an email form, the right way to do that. And then we'll come up with a place that we'll get together ahead of time at the Capitol and kind of get into a group there too. So we'll cover all that stuff at a later time. But again, just keep watching wherever you saw the notification for this online town hall. We'll make sure that we post those notifications up again on the Facebook, on the YouTube, and then anywhere else that people will share it. So, okay. So Trish, you were about to switch gears. We've got a couple bills that are going to be heard instead of Judiciary Committee. They will go to the Government, Military, and Veteran Affairs Committee instead.
Yeah.
So go ahead, and I'll just let you have the floor here.
Well, and I'm going to just introduce it, and then I welcome Keith to join in on the conversation. Many of us have been watching what's happening at the federal level. And as you may or may not know, NFOA is a state level organization. We are focused primarily on what's happening within the state of Nebraska. So at the local level, meeting at the state capitol and at the city level. But we can't help but notice what's happening at the federal level. And we are proud one bill that's been, the timing of it couldn't have been better. And it's the Second Amendment Reservation Act. And this bill is so important because right now you are looking at all different kinds of proposed legislation that would affect the entire country, some of which are just absolutely extremely unfathomably crazy. And the only way we can protect ourselves at the state level is if we have some form of Second Amendment sanctuary status. So Keith, can you talk about how this bill would help protect us from this unconstitutional attempt at the federal level to restrict our rights?
Well, it would basically keep the state of Nebraska from using any of its law enforcement officials, basically any public entity in Nebraska from following through with what would be considered an unconstitutional restriction on your Second Amendment right. Obviously, there's probably going to be some discussion as to how do we determine if it's unconstitutional. But I think for the immediate effect, I think it would at least keep things like executive orders. As we know, Mr. Biden likes his executive orders. And with the statements he put out yesterday, he could very well think it's within his authority to ban high-capacity magazines and everybody that has one has to turn them in. Well, this would keep any official or basically any government employee of the state of Nebraska from, and actually not just state of Nebraska, I think, well, it does also talk about political entities. So they're also talking about sheriff's offices, your city officers. It would keep all those organizations from basically doing what the federal government is trying to tell them to do. So if they say, we need to round up everybody's high capacity magazines, we want you to go and set up a shop and have people turn them in. Well, under this act, it would basically tell the federal government, well, no, we're not going to do that. If you're going to do it, you need to bring the feds in to do it. That's kind of the long and short of it. Again, figuring out whether or not something is unconstitutional, there's going to probably be a process for that. But I think in the immediate effect, with the way the executive orders have been coming down, I think that's probably going to be the biggest immediate effect to keep anything like that from happening. Mm-hmm. If it goes through the process and Congress passes a law and it's signed by President Biden, obviously there's other judicial ways to go about seeing if it's unconstitutional or not. But I think specifically the executive orders is kind of the one that I'm mostly concerned about. And this gives us that protection where they can't commandeer state or local authorities to make their wishes happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The timing of it couldn't be better. And one of the things that many of us forget is we're the United States of America. We're not America. We are the United States. And each state has a level of sovereignty that we forget. And the federal government seems to also forget that. And so from the perspective of this great experiment, this amazing republic that we have that holds democratic ideals and yet is a republic, not a democracy, it's really important for states to assert their rights as well. And so at the state level, this would be a resounding win for Nebraska. And then when you think about how it would trickle down into our state legislature and our local ordinances, that we as Nebraskans are done. We amended our Constitution in 1986, Article 1, Section 1. And if you haven't read it, please Google Article 1, Section 1 of the Nebraska Constitution, because I think we made it abundantly clear where we stand as citizens in our state with regards to our rights to self-defense and use of firearms for all lawful purposes. And that also goes as a message to the federal government that this is inherently part of our America, our DNA, the right to be independent and free and also responsible for ourselves, right? Personally be responsible and accountable for our own defense of self and others when the situation warrants it. And these attempts to place $200 fees on standard capacity magazines and require the registration of ammunition. Well, under non-COVID, non-ammo shortage times, that's 200 rounds minimum of registered ammunition I'm going to deregister every time I go to the range. The ignorance is strong in a lot of this legislation at the federal level, and that really concerns us as well. And we really hope the Second Amendment Preservation Act gets the attention it deserves. It has not yet been scheduled for a hearing. However, I am pretty sure that we're looking at sometime in February that hearing is going to happen. I can't let the cat out of the bag because the cat's in the bag. So basically, what I need everyone on this town hall to do is to pay attention to our social media pages. As soon as we can announce that the hearing for LB 188, the Adopt the Second Amendment Preservation Act, is going to be heard, is the time where you need to prepare or already have been prepared with your testimony. Why does this matter to you? How does protecting your Second Amendment rights affect your ability to prosper and pursue happiness as an American citizen in Nebraska? Start preparing your messaging now. We're going to have another town hall, of course, to help you refine your messages, and just stand by because we're going to also have hopefully a large turnout in support of this piece of legislation.
Yes, very true. All right. Do we have anything else that needs to be mentioned? I don't think we have any questions regarding LB 188 that I've missed out there on either side. So if that's all we have for questions, let's go on. Another thing that we hear a lot about, Trish, is more and more states all the time. I just recently read that Utah is the latest state that the governor either will sign or has already signed into law. We're talking about constitutional carry, or a better way that I like to say is permitless carry. So it basically recognizes the Second Amendment as it was written and as it was intended. So right now, we don't have to have a permit to open carry in Nebraska unless you are inside Omaha, as I understand it. So we are permitless as far as open carry goes, but we do have to have a permit to carry concealed. So what would LB 236 do in regards to concealed carry if that one goes into law?
So that was really interesting. It would basically empower the county as the legal entity to establish the county as permitless carry counties. So for instance, we've had many different counties across the state of Nebraska become sanctuary counties, Second Amendment sanctuary counties, basically positioning themselves as counties that recognize and respect the rights of Nebraskans to lawfully utilize these tools for the purposes they wish to utilize them for, which is self-defense and hunting and any lawful purpose. So the constitutional carry or permitless carry portion of LB 236 would allow counties to determine that within their county jurisdiction that the entire county was permitless carry. So for instance, you would not need to go through a concealed carry class. Like for instance, right now I live in Sarpy. I'll be moving to Cass County soon. So say Cass County passed this, or it gets passed in Cass County as a county decides to allow permitless carry. Well, that would mean I would not need a concealed handgun permit to carry concealed within the boundaries of Cass County. But as soon as I left the county, as you might, leave any jurisdiction, a concealed handgun permit would be required to continue to conceal that handgun. I find this bill really interesting because it empowers the counties which has been a level of authority that often doesn't get a lot of attention. But if you think about it, if this were to pass and you had a majority of counties passing permitless carry, then, it might be where only a couple counties would remain in the state that would require a concealed handgun permit. And then they'd have that whole pressure of fitting in with the rest of the state to provide, congruent law. So this one's really interesting. A lot of strategy behind this one.
So if this were to be passed, and let's say that a majority of the counties in Nebraska did make the decision to be permitless carry within the boundaries of their county, that would go a long way then to showing the lawmakers in the unicameral that Nebraska wants this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to actually, because we've tried in the past to get a permitless carry bill even introduced, and even to get one introduced is such an uphill battle as it sits right now, especially with the members on Judiciary Committee. And it's just like you said before, we don't have a lot of 2A friendly or pro 2A friends, as it were, on the Judiciary Committee. Mm-hmm. And so in lieu of being able to get a bill to actually gain some traction in the unicameral, if we could at least get this, then the counties would be able to show the rest of the state that, hey, this is something that Nebraska as a whole really does want, minus a couple places. And there are people in those counties that do as well. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I think that it would, at the very least, it would send a message, and at the very best, it would be another stepping stone to getting closer to what we really want to see happen. Just like the stepping stone as far as concealed firearms inside a vehicle. Yeah, it's not where we want to get to, but it's a step closer to where we want to be, and it will set a precedent that will get us even closer down the road. So,
yeah, John, that you said that in an absolutely excellent way. Great presentation of that, because the other part of it is being able to hold our elected officials accountable. The only way we're able to do that is if we get them on the record. Mm-hmm. When they can kill things in committee and then their vote is not made public, then all of that 2A comma but, which I love to refer to as I'm pro Second Amendment, or I have a concealed handgun permit, but this reasonable gun law, blah, blah, blah. Those are the things that are very trying and stressing, because it's very difficult to know whether Senator X or Senator Y really stands with us or not. So having them have a bill such as this come into that committee is great, because there's a greater chance for it to get voted out. And even if it goes nowhere, it's going to get debated. It's going to get heard. We're going to hear from the voices, the mouths of our elected senators, where they actually stand with regards to our firearm rights. And if they took an oath to support our Constitution, then supporting LB 236 is right in alignment with that. Mm-hmm. And so it'll be really interesting how this one comes through.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so those are the two that will go in front of the Government, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee. And we don't know the dates on those, but as Trish said, just keep paying attention, because when we get the word, there may not be a lot of time to prepare. We might not get a lot of notice once those hearings are scheduled. So this will be, it'll be a little bit different than NFOA Day on March 3rd, where we've got some time. People, we've had that out on the social media for quite some time, and in the call to action email as well, I think for quite some time now that's coming, and people can know about it. We might not get a lot of time, or have a lot of people that can get time off at such short notice. So that's right, where the letter writing campaign and the email campaign becomes so important, because those are things that you can do even on a lunch break. Potentially, you don't even have to take time off work or leave your house to do those. And don't think for a second that your voice doesn't matter in a case like this. Any of these bills, any of these testimonies, your voice matters. And especially if it gets entered in public record, it has to be read, it has to be counted, and every voice will matter. That's the whole reason we have Nebraska Firearms Owners Association, is because your voices matter. And we may be the speaker or the mouthpiece through which a lot of people speak, but we don't specifically just speak for you. You speak for you. Again, as a Nebraskan, you are the second house of the government. So what you say matters. But the people that work in that Capitol building, the legislators in the unicameral, if they don't hear from you, then they don't know what you expect from them. And it is our job. It's my job. It's Keith's job. It's Trisha's job. It's all of you who are listening to me who live in the state of Nebraska right now. It's all of our job to let these elected representatives know what the people whom they represent expect of them. And that's why we're having this. That's why we're getting together tonight to talk about all of this stuff. So, real quick, I'm going to let Trish, would you just kind of sum up a little bit? So if anybody wants to take action on any of these bills, whether it's March 3rd or a date yet to be determined, what are the best steps to go through? Again, I know you mentioned it earlier, but if somebody wants to help out, if somebody wants to make their voice heard, what is the process for that?
So the biggest thing is getting used to our website for the Nebraska Legislature. It's nebraskalegislature.gov. Go to that. On that website, you can find on the left-hand side a link to all the bills. And bills are those that are getting proposed. They're not laws yet. And you can look the bill up by their bill number. You can also look and find the link to every committee. So you go to the committees page and then scroll down to the Judiciary Committee page and click on that. There you would see all the members of the committee, their processes for receiving testimony, their deadlines, and their email addresses. You're going to want to email not only the committee email, but every member of the committee's email address individually. If you're going to email testimony. You can also find their phone numbers to call them. You can also find out what office they're in. And if you have time and you can't come March 3rd, go visit them before March 3rd and make your voice heard. They're responsible for listening to you. That is their number one job. And so you want to pay attention to the Judiciary Committee, and you're going to also pay attention for this section, the Government and Military Affairs Committee. I also say this, March 3rd, NFOA Day at the state capitol, please come. Your presence matters. Every single one of you makes a huge difference when they see us lining up the halls and filling up the rooms. They have COVID precautions. They're going to keep us socially distanced. We're all going to wear our masks, but we're going to make our voices heard. And if March 3rd isn't in, then be prepared for next week, because next week, I believe, is when we're going to do the Second Amendment Preservation Act. I don't know what day it will be, but we may have literally, a few days notice. So if there's any 2 days for you to go visit your state senator and attend a committee hearing, it's going to be next week and March 3rd.
Yep, absolutely. So somebody out there on the YouTube side, Major Pandemic, wants to know, can we get all the contacts, who to contact on the NFOA website?
No. So our website does not have the committee contact information. You have to go to nebraskalegislature.gov. There it's posted. If you go to that website and then click on committees, then you're going to click on standing committees, and then you're going to click on judiciary. Their email addresses and phone numbers can change. And so when we used to post it, we found out how often we had erroneous information. So we go direct to the source, and then I'll make sure you're contacting the right people.
Yep, absolutely. So I just wanted to address that. There are reasons why we do things, and sometimes there are reasons why we don't always do things on our website, and it's because we want you to have the most current information. So even if we were to post the link, that link could change without any notice as well. So the best thing to do, the best thing to do is just go, if you didn't remember that, and I did put the nebraskalegislature.gov website out there in the comment section on both sides, Facebook and YouTube, so you can get there. But you know what? If I'm looking for a bill or I'm looking for a committee, just a simple Google search. Just search Nebraska Legislature Judiciary Committee 2021, and it will get you where you need to go. You might have to click a couple different things, but you'll get there. So the info is out there. You can always contact any of us. The best thing to do if you want to send an email off is probably just email admin. Would that be the best one?
Mm-hmm.
admin@nebraskafirearms.org, and I'll put that out there too. Nice dead air here while I can't type and talk at the same time, guys. There we go. All right. There are a few people that would like some example emails that they can copy and paste. We'll see what we can do as far as that goes. Just keep in mind a couple things. If you're going to copy and paste an email, please, or even if you're going to copy and paste and then print it out and put it in an envelope, address it, stamp it, and mail it. It's a great thing to get you started, but please change it enough to make it your own words as well, especially the first opening paragraph. And the reason I say that is every one of these has to get open and every one of these has to get read. But it's not always the senator that's going to read these. They have aides that work for them. And after the 150th letter, when they open it up and it opens the same way, they're not going to read what you wrote down at the bottom if you added your own thoughts at the end of it. So put your own thoughts at the beginning too, so that they see that, hey, this one says something different, and you'll get your whole letter read. And not only that, but it'll stick in their mind, and they will be able to tell the senator for whom they work, hey, we've got a lot of people that are saying this, and they're not all just copy and pasting. Now, if you want to copy and paste, then we'll see what we can do. And it's better than not saying anything. But again, just try to put this into your own words the best you can. Same way with the emails. Keep everything polite, courteous, and respectful, because if you are spewing any kind of profanities, it will get kicked out and they won't even look at it. So it doesn't matter your opinion of people. Please keep that out. Just keep your opinions to the bill that you're writing about. You have to do a different one for each bill. You can't put them all into one. You have to send a different letter for every bill you want to comment or testify on. What else? What have I forgotten? Anything else?
No, John, you did a great job. You've been doing this for years now.
I may have had this conversation. For those of you that don't know, I'm not new to running my mouth on the internet. I'm only new to doing this for the NFOA. I may have had this conversation on how to talk to lawmakers and how to make your voice heard in such a way that they want to listen. Because there are a lot of things, and I agree with you. Things like "shall not be infringed" are great mottos, and they make great bumper stickers. But when it comes to actually getting things done, especially getting things done by people who don't see the world the way that we do, then we do have to change. And just remember, what's the old saying? You'll catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, and keep that in mind as you're writing your emails or your letters. Let's see. If there one more question, I'm going to let Trish or Keith comment on this because you both have more experience than I do. Is there a preference on communications to the legislature? I mean, is the proverbial snail mail better than an email? Do they both carry the same weight? Is one better than the other as far as making the loudest voice be heard?
So here's the racking and stacking. Visiting them in their office has the most impact. Mm-hmm. Second most impact is a phone call. Third most impact is a unique and individually crafted email. That's why we don't tend to share, copy and paste and send this to your senator now. Their systems can tell that they're getting mass amounts of copy and paste. They want to hear your words, not ours. Now, we can provide you samples so that you understand how to construct it, but you have to make it your language. You have to make it your own points. Kenwood did have a question about putting our post. We do have an event already created on Facebook for March 3rd. So if you want to share it, I've just posted it again to our Facebook page on our main Facebook page. Please share that event to get the word out. We once had a message go viral and hit 2 million people. We'd like this to at least go viral in our state. So it's an important.
Yep. Very, very true. And again, keep in mind, these are all Nebraska bills. These are all things in the Nebraska legislature in Lincoln. These don't have anything to do with HR 127 that's been introduced in the U.S. House. These don't have anything to do with our U.S. senators or our U.S. representatives. Those aren't the people that you need to contact for these bills. And that is not what NFOA does. We let the nationwide organizations handle the nationwide bills. Our job is to represent you as Nebraskans who own firearms, and we represent you in the Nebraska legislature, or anywhere locally too. It's not just in Lincoln. If there's something coming up in a county or a city hall meeting that we need to know about, let us know, and we'll see what we can do to represent you there as well to the best of our abilities. But that's where membership comes in. That's where having you on the team comes in. So if you're not a member, please go to nebraskafirearms.org. And let me put that back on the screen again, nebraskafirearms.org, and join. It's free. It's always going to be free. We don't require any kind of money to join up. We'll take it. If you want to send us money, please go ahead and do so. We're not asking you to, but don't think for a second we don't need it. That's not the case either. But we will never require a dime from you to be a member. But the biggest thing is what we do require, what we do really request is your help. Your help spreading the word. You'd be surprised how many people that I talk to, and I'm not that far from Lincoln or Omaha, but even up here in Norfolk, how many people that I talk to that I say, hey, I got elected onto the board of the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association, and I hear some crickets, and they look at me and they say, the what? And it's astounding how many folks out there across the state don't know we're here. So the more people that know about us and the more people that are willing to help us out, the louder our voice will be, and the more we'll be able to accomplish as a team, right? Together, everyone achieves more. We can't do this alone. The three of us can't do this. The seven of us on the board can't do this without your help. So I want to thank everybody for watching tonight. We had quite a few people on both the Facebook side and the YouTube side as well. If you have not yet liked the Facebook page, make sure you do that. That way you find out that, when these posts come out, you'll get notified of them. And again, I mean, algorithms don't always work to our advantage. So make sure that you regularly just go to the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association page and check that out. The YouTube channel that we're on tonight is a new one. Just because of reasons, there was a channel at one point that we don't have access to. We have a new channel, and that's what we're on tonight. When this started, we had 0 subscribers. I haven't looked to see how many people have subscribed, but please, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and we will do our best to get the videos up. And not only that, but we can make posts as well. And anything that we can post in Facebook, we should be able to post as well on the YouTube channel. So catch that community tab also. But please do that. If you have any questions, if you're having troubles with membership or anything like that, or if you're a member and you're not getting these emails, these calls to action, because there have been a couple in the last week that have gone out. One went out earlier tonight. And if you didn't get that, then please send an email from the email address that it needs to go to. Send it to admin@nebraskafirearms.org, and let us know that you should be getting these emails, or you thought you were signed up and something went wrong and they're not coming through. We will get that fixed as quickly as possible, so that when we get the email sent out, that you are getting those. So, all right. Trish, Keith, have I left anything out? Is there anything that we need to cover before we let everybody go?
So how can people share what they just enjoyed this evening?
Absolutely. So if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a share button. If you're watching this on Facebook, guess what? There's a share button. So please do that. These aren't going away. Once we do this live, you can go back and view these anytime. They may need to render it maybe a few minutes before you can watch them again, but these will be here tomorrow. These will be here next week, and Lord willing, they'll be here on the Facebook page next year and on YouTube as well. And so you can still share however you found out about this and got to us tonight. That same link will always be good to get back to this exact online town hall. It won't be live anymore, obviously, but but you can still catch all this info. And if you missed any of it, you'll be able to go back through and listen to it time and time again, as often as you'd like. And again, you can share this with everybody, and please do. And if you've got people that you know that have ties to Nebraska and aren't residents, Trish, can people who don't live in Nebraska join up with NFOA?
So that's the thing that's interesting. We do have a associate membership. But with our new website, distinguishing between the NFOA full member and that is difficult. Our biggest thing is join our online community. So our online community is also available through our website. So go to Nebraska Firearm owners.org, and then you'll see online community and click that. You do not have to be a member of NFOA to stay in touch with NFOA. It is a non-social media social media in the sense that it's online. It's ancient forum level technology, which means most bots and other advanced, what do you want to call it? Spammers never pay any attention to it because it's not worth it. And the code is so archaic. But it's a great way for us to stay in touch. We also post a lot of information there. So examples of testimony and letters that we've written that you can use as an example, we post there. There's buying and selling and researching, and ask, the fellow gun owner your favorite question about, what's going on with this firearm, or do you like this firearm? It's a wonderful little resource. And again, that is free. So even if you're not a Nebraskan, please join us there, and you can add your voice to ours that way.
So to get there, you just go to nebraskafirearms.org and then access the online community from there. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm, correct.
And then the best place, anything that we're going to post that deals with these bills, those are going to be under the full members only section, more than likely, because these only apply to Nebraskans. Correct. And to be a full member, you have to reside within the state of Nebraska. But under that section, once you're approved as a full member, then there's a full members only portion of that forum that then you'll be able to see. And there is a section in that, a subsection, I should say, of that section called 2021 Legislation. And anything that pertains to this year's bills, we will put under that 2021 legislation heading. That way, if you're looking for it, if it pertains to the 2021 legislation, we'll get it there. That doesn't mean it's the only place it'll be, but we'll make sure that we get them there so that you can find them there.
Okay.
So, all right. Is there anything else that I need to?
Yeah. One last thing, our friend Mark, the government doesn't make it easy to connect with them. So where I thought that the list of names on the Judiciary Committee would actually be linked to their email addresses, they're not that smart. And so Mark has posted to the comments section of this YouTube channel the email addresses of all of the members of the Judiciary Committee. So the Judd PL is the formal email address to the Judiciary Committee, and then the rest are the individual members. There is no cost to join NFOA. NFOA is free. We love donations. It does help us fight the fight, but it's more important that you have a voice at the state capitol. And so membership dues are not part of our minimum requirements. So you join us, be a voice, and when you can, make a donation, because of course, that's how we get things done.
Yep. And I did I copied that comment from Mark on the YouTube side, and I did post that on Facebook as well. So you should see that down in the comments. So, all right, on behalf of our president, Patricia Harold, on behalf of our director of legislative affairs, Keith Kollasch, and myself, the director of media, John Anderson, along with the other 4 board members who weren't part of this tonight. And of course, on behalf of all of you as well, who are members, and those of you who are about to be members, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for sharing. I've seen a lot of comments out there of people who joined up tonight and became members, and that is awesome. And that's one of the reasons that we do this. But again, now that you're a member, that was just the first step. That wasn't the end of the journey. So we need your help. We need boots on the ground. We need people just to have discussions. If nothing else, send that letter off, but make sure that when you go to the coffee shop, when you're talking around the break room at work, make sure you're having these conversations and it might get you in trouble at work. So be careful. Do it where you can be safe and have these conversations. Always use discretion, but at the same time, have the conversations with your fellow Nebraskans and let them know that there is a place, there is an organization called Nebraska Firearms Owners Association who has the firearms owners' interest in mind, and we will be here to fight for the bills that are good for us and fight against the bills that are bad for us as firearm owners. And again, we're not just board members, we're firearm owners as well. We have a vested interest in this because we are just like you. And like I said, we all have day jobs. We all have, this is all volunteer done. And I'm not saying that to pat ourselves on the back. I'm saying that we really are just like you. We're just Nebraskans who own guns, who are willing to stand up and be counted and say, hey, enough is enough. Let's get some of this stuff done. So thank you all for watching. Again, stay tuned to social media and the online community, the forum there. Two things about that forum. Number one, it is not censored. So unless you're breaking a law, inciting violence or something like that, what you say can stay up on that. And we don't have a bunch of fact checkers to throw your comment off or throw you out of there. Second of all, unlike some of the social media sites, if you would like to go to the classified section, buy, sell, trade, firearms, accessories, whatever, ammo, anything like that, and not just firearms, knives, hunting, all those discussions can be had there as well. It's a great place to meet like-minded individuals in an area where, again, we don't censor our members. We just want to make sure that nobody's breaking any laws and nobody gets hurt. But aside from that, we're not the word police. So go check that out as well. All right, we're going to call it. Thanks everybody for joining us. Stay tuned for the next online town hall where we talk about NFOA Day at the Capitol. That's coming up March 3rd. We don't know for sure when we're going to schedule that town hall, but as soon as we know, we'll get that out as well. Share this with everybody. Talk about it with everybody. Thanks, y'all.